Welcome to the Estates Made Simple podcast with Jenna Carvello and Gordon Vanderleek. We are on a mission to simplify the world of estate administration, helping executors gain the knowledge required to manage an estate. Please note, the following is for informational purposes only and is not to be considered legal, tax, or financial advice. We recommend you seek individualized advice for your unique situation with qualified professionals.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. We're currently recording this with some snow on the ground, so we're staying bundled up and nice and warm today, but we appreciate you joining us. Today we have an interesting topic. We're talking a little bit on the positives about being an executor. I know Gordon and I always talk about the hardships and the risks of being an executor, so we really wanted to highlight what the benefits could be to you and your family. So welcome, Gord. Nice to see you as always.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to tackle this topic, and always nice to hit the record button for the interesting conversations that we have. So it's always great to chat about these things. And I appreciate this being on the outline because there is that element of it. I guess if you look at all the material that's out there in the world of estate administration, a lot of it is here's all the things that you can trip up on. Here's all the problems that could occur. And certainly as a lawyer, what comes across my desk are those items which are usually problems we're trying to solve. That's why people sometimes retain a lawyer, because there's a dispute in the state or there's a friction within the family going forward. So I think it's helpful to balance some of our cautionary comments along the ways with also, hey, but there are some positives, right? And yeah, I think with that, maybe I can kick off by, in terms of reflecting on it and the feedback I see from clients is really a sense of accomplishment. I think if you may be the type of person that is goal-oriented or task-driven. And if that's you and you find yourself being called upon for these sort of roles because you're the one that's the organized one in the family and you get things done. And maybe that's why parents selected you or a sibling selected you. I don't know, when I finish a project, there is that sense of accomplishment, right? It's a bit maybe intimidating at the front end, but if you break it down, okay, you work with professionals, you can say, okay, it's done. To that point, from a lawyer's perspective, so I think it's very satisfying for clients as well. Some of the funnest portions of the estate administration is doing the distribution at the end, where you hand it over to somebody going, okay, we got across the finish line. And there is that sense of finality, and it's okay, we wrapped this project up and we had success. The football analogy, you got into the end zone, and a lot of work and maybe some struggles along the way and some sleepless nights or some stresses in taking it on. But I think rightly an executor at the end of the day can feel a sense of accomplishment and go, I got this done. And I think tagged to that would be, if part of your motivation in saying yes was you're fulfilling a promise that you made to somebody else, whether it's a parent or a sibling or a friend, there can be also just a satisfaction of saying you fulfilled that promise. I think that's tied in as much as it's okay, you're finished a project, but you're also fulfilling a promise. And so, yes, I'll do that for you. And when somebody asked you in their lifetime to say, will you be my executor? And you could feel that pride of saying, yeah, I feel honored to help, and I will do that. I felt that when I've been co-executor with, sometimes I serve in that role with other family members, and you get that sense of, if a client had asked me, Gord, will you be an executor? I go, yeah, it feels good to get to the end and go, I got that done. There's definitely a positive feeling there. So I think that's good to highlight that though that is a positive element of serving in this role.
And I know you were mentioning before the call too, that there is an element of helping through the grieving process. Some individuals find it beneficial to keep busy with the administrative tasks, at least for the first few weeks, while they adjust to their new reality. So that administration and those tasks that need to be done can help distract them a little bit from the pain. Others find it overwhelming. It's totally individual to the executor, but others find it overwhelming to take care of the administration while they're grieving. So it really depends, but it could help for the right person.
Yeah, exactly. What would you say is another positive that you experienced in the estate administration world?
Yeah, I would say an executor has control over the administration. So, particularly if they are a beneficiary, they might like having control over what steps are taken, what decisions have been made, the speed of the estate administration, because they know exactly what's going on. They know when they'll receive their inheritance. They're not wondering if someone's stealing money from the estate because they're in full control. So, that might help those non trusting people. If they're in control, then they're just trusting themselves and they don't have to worry about someone else making a mistake or taking too long on the estate administration. And this is what's funny. I was speaking to my husband about this very topic, and I asked him what he would find as a benefit of being executor for his parents' estate. And that's exactly what he had mentioned, just knowing what's going on and how and when things will happen.
Yeah. I think related to that, a thought that comes to my mind is, and maybe that ties to my earlier comment about that sense of accomplishment, is that if you can actually, you say, okay, I'm going to do a good job on this. And I know from my perspective, I always go, I want to do it faster than the next person. Maybe that's the competitive side of me coming out. But I look at it and go, if I don't know, if I'm an executor, I'm going to go, I'm going to work really hard to do a good job, and I'm going to get it done faster than the average person, and that's going to be a benefit to the beneficiaries. They may not always appreciate that, but that sort of ties to the control, is you can dictate the speed on which an estate is done. So if you do a good job of that, that relates to that sense of accomplishment, that you achieve the efficiency and say, because I was involved, this estate got wrapped up quicker than had somebody else been involved. And to your point of, if you're on the outside looking in, compared to you're the one in control, maybe one of the benefits is you're going to get your residual interest in the estate a little bit quicker,
Mm-hmm.
because you were in control and you can make sure things get done in a timely manner, right? In terms of all the advice we give, and if people are following that advice, then there's that sense of, hey, I'm glad I was involved. I think that was a positive, my participation was a positive benefit to the family.
Mm-hmm. And I know you
Yeah.
have one more exciting benefit to share with our listeners too.
Yeah, and the big one is, of course, compensation, right? So the starting point is that you're not expected to do this for free, right? Sometimes it gets a little awkward in a family dynamic, going, if there's more than one child, and are you expected to charge for your time? And that can be a lightning rod issue in terms of what you're charging for compensation. With that being said, the starting point is you're entitled to compensation, and there's no expectation you're doing it for free. It has to be fair and reasonable. And we've talked about that in other podcasts. But there is that element of, if you have the time, there may be, the positive element would be you're going to get paid for your time for doing that, right? And so we're not going to get into the details in this podcast about the specifics of what is fair and reasonable compensation. So we refer to other podcasts that we've done on that topic. But if we're looking at the rewards, you could argue that's a reward, right? At the end of the day, you're going to get compensated for your time, which compared to other things you might be doing in life, you might not get compensated, right? I think that's an overall benefit. You do have to report that income on your tax return, and you're not obligated to take compensation, but you are entitled to compensation. Usually the issue is what's fair and reasonable, and you can get reimbursed your expenses. So to the extent, that could be a positive thing. Yeah, I think it deserves to be on the list to say that you can earn an income from this, right? So I think for some people, it doesn't happen often, but I remember I saw one retired guy, and he came to me with an estate, and he goes, yeah, I'm handling about 3 or 4 of these for my friends, and this is just what I'm doing. I retired early. I've got the time. I like this. And that's a benefit for him. He's putting groceries on the table, or maybe he can afford to, he's got some spending money because he's getting reimbursed on the estate. I'd put that as a very tangible benefit, because it's a dollar amount that ends up in your bank account. Leaving aside it has to be taxed, and leaving aside there may be a dispute about what is appropriate compensation, and that's a more nuanced topic, but definitely a reward I would think deserves to be on the list.
And for all of our listeners today, being executor can be a thankless job. But as we've highlighted today, there are also benefits. When you're planning your own estate, consider these benefits when talking to your executor. And if you're acting as an executor, maybe this will give you a little bit of motivation or a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you everyone for listening. We appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time.